I didn't say a word when they served me with that final HOA demand. I just slid an old, leather-bound folder across the table. Inside, a 1919 certified Texas water rights deed. By the time they finished reading it, their dream of a 45-home luxury expansion had turned into lakefront property overnight. The Cedar Ridge HOA thought they could steal my family's land while I was stationed in Kuwait. They built their neatly paved cul-de-sacs and private tennis courts downstream from a dam they didn't even know existed. On my property, I'm a retired U.S. Army water systems engineer. That little dam, it had been sitting there for decades, quietly holding back millions of gallons, just waiting for someone arrogant enough to build in the wrong place. They wanted a fight. What they got was a lesson in federal water law and gravity. Name's Ethan Cole. I'm 38 years old, third-generation caretaker of 62 acres just outside San Marcos, Texas. My grandfather, Earl Cole, Gramps to us, bought this land in 1952. Back when it was nothing but cedar scrub and limestone outcrops. He wasn't rich, just stubborn. He cleared it himself, fenced it, and ran cattle on it for 40 years. In 1972, after 2 bad droughts, he built a small earth dam across a low valley on the back end of the property. Not for power, just a rainwater reservoir for the herd and a reliable source for neighbors during dry spells. It was built to Army Corps specs, with a spillway and reinforced gates. My dad helped pour the concrete. Gramps always said, "Ethan, someday the water's gonna be worth more than the land itself. Never sell it, and never let anyone else control it." I joined the Army at 20, trained in civil and hydraulic engineering, and spent the better part of a decade designing and maintaining water systems in some of the harshest places on Earth. You learn quick in war zones. Whoever controls the water controls everything. In 2021, while I was still in Kuwait, my dad passed. The land went into a trust managed by my cousin Dylan, a good guy, but more comfortable behind a computer than on a tractor. He kept up the property taxes through an auto-pay service but never looked at the statements. That's when they saw their chance. Linda Prescott, 49 years old, president of the Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association, drives a pearl-white Lexus SUV, wears pastel blazers like armor, and speaks in that syrup-coated tone that makes you check for the knife going into your back. Linda's married to the city's zoning commissioner, which means no doesn't apply to her. She has a reputation for community enhancement projects, which is code for buying or seizing whatever land she thinks will boost her property values. Cedar Ridge is a high-end development that sprung up just a half-mile downstream from my dam. The HOA had plans for a Phase 2 expansion, right onto the far edge of my property. I came home in February 2023 and drove out to check the land, except the back pasture didn't look like my pasture anymore. There were survey flags everywhere, half-poured driveways, and a shiny billboard reading, "Cedar Ridge Estates, Lakeside Luxury Living coming soon." I pulled up to a foreman in a hard hat. "Hey, you know you're building on private property, right?" He smirked. "Got permits and HOA approval. This is Phase 2 land now." Turns out, while I was overseas, Linda's HOA filed an adverse possession claim on 12 acres of my land. They argued that since no one had been actively using it and they made improvements at dirt road, some drainage, it should be legally theirs. The worst part, Dylan had gotten certified letters from the county but thought they were junk mail and ignored them. By the time I got home, a county judge had granted the HOA temporary possession. Pending final review, I didn't yell, I didn't threaten, I just started pulling documents. First stop the county deeds office, to pull our original water rights paperwork. Second stop the Texas Water Development Board, to confirm that the dam's watershed zone legally extended far downstream, right into Cedar Ridge. Then I called a buddy from my Army days who now works for the state's Environmental Compliance Division. He reminded me, if a property is inside an active flood control zone and upstream infrastructure is compromised, development halts instantly. 2 weeks later, during a heavy spring rain, I went out to the dam. The water was high. I inspected the gates. Perfect working order. Then, I opened them just enough to let the reservoir surge. It wasn't dangerous. Just enough to let Cedar Ridge's brand new driveways, tennis courts, and pristine lawns get their first taste of lakefront living. The HOA called the county screaming about intentional flooding. The county called me, and I calmly emailed them my 1919 water rights deed and state-issued flood control maintenance logs. Legally, I was in the clear. In fact, my property was recognized as critical water infrastructure, which meant they were in violation for building inside a protected floodplain. Within a month, Cedar Ridge Phase 2 was dead. Linda Prescott resigned as HOA president for personal reasons, and those 12 acres, back in my name with a new fence and a locked gate. Now every time it rains and that reservoir fills, I smile because I know I own the water, the land, and the last word.